Hey ho, by the end of this video we should have 3 different ways of restricting the character movement. This would be locking it in place wherever it happens to be, so we cannot move until it unsimulates. Then the next way we can do it, we can lock it to the mesh, so we stick to that. It looks like we're sticking to the root, but the root's attached to the pelvis because it's not a physics, doesn't have a physics body. So we can lock ourselves to the pelvis until we come back from it. Can't go anywhere. Then there's my preferred method, where I limit the distance that I can travel from the mesh, and also should turn off the ability to walk off ledges too whenever it's simulating, as you can see, and then we can obviously run off them again. And I also set up a little check on the beginning of interpolate physics to see if we might want to remove any bones that are being processed if their parents are simulating, so that we don't have to process them at all. And I turned this little do once delay into its own event that we can call and set to, so that we can call and re-trigger. So I hope you're finding this useful, and I hope this video isn't a bit too long. The first thing I wanted to do today was, inside this simulation component, I wanted to fix up this little do once delay and unset of set to simulate, because doing it like this and then resetting it like this causes a little hole if we reset it before this delay is completed. So I'm going to delete this delay altogether, and I'm going to add a custom event for recovery delay. And from recovery delay, I want to fire a re-triggerable delay this time, and we'll plug that duration in as an input to the event. Then we can take our set simulate off there and set it here instead. Now we have a delay that we can re-trigger on an event, which we can call to stop the simulation, however we want. So let's call recovery delay, put our duration to 5 like before, and this time we'll have the false reset the do once, and that should just about do the trick and fix the hole. Just need to come into the third person character example, and probably I compiled that. I'm going to want to call that recovery delay from example just like the variable, and this time we can set that to some very low number like 0.1, so we can test it. And that should now seem to work like before, but if you were to switch it on and off repetitively, it should cause less problems. Right. The next thing I need to do is, it might be a good idea to get the parent bone of our mesh and find out if it's simulating. Now, I'll come back to that. We'll just is simulating. So that's the same target. If the parent of the bone that we're about to process is currently simulating, we probably don't really want to be processing that bone at all, because it's only gonna unset from simulating when its parent's getting unset from simulating. There are probably exceptions to that, but I don't think there are really very many. So doing this is probably going to increase performance a little bit, because we won't have to process the bones anymore. Sorry, I'll just put this on a branch. Got to remember all the movement stuff that I'm about to do in a minute. So if this is not true, then we're going to fire the bone as normal. So if its parent is not simulating, fire it as usual. Otherwise, we're going to want to remove it from our simulation cache. So let's just duplicate that here quickly. Oops, that one. We're going to want to remove this item from the array. If that's true, that is some spaghetti mess, which I don't want to spend too long fixing. So let's just pop them all down a bit, across a bit, and we can pull these right back because they do no harm. And we can see what's going on there. So removing it from the array, its parent simulating, so that we don't end up trying to keep processing. We could also do this check before we even fire into play physics here and remove it there. But wherever and we can also do it on the overlap. We could check when we're overlapping if it's, but that could still leave a gap where a bone might get into the simulation cache, and this is where it's always going to fire from. So thought I may as well put it there instead of on the loop or on the overlap. I might still put it on the overlap, because then we might remove a few extra bones now and again when they don't need to be simulating. So that's the first part of this. That's a little bit of fixing. Okay, so let's stop him from moving when his pelvis is simulated. The first thing I'm going to do is I'll add the first of 3 custom events, which you can choose from which you want to use. We'll call this one lock movement in place. Then I'll pull you there. From this we'll branch, take that condition, add it as an input so that we can switch it on and off outside of the event. And we'll call this set locked. Right. Now, this is probably the most basic way of doing this. Get our character, just get disable movement. I'll pull out our character movement component for us. And if this event fires true, we want to disable the movement. And if it fires false, we will want to set movement mode to walking so that we can walk again. And so yeah, this is probably the most straightforward way of stopping a character from moving. If we want to fire this on tick, however, we don't really want to keep disabling movement over and over again. So I'm going to add a do once here and add a do once here. Pull these over. And pop you there. We're going to need this for a condition in a minute. Okay, now these two do onces want to reset each other if they fired. This one at the bottom wants to start closed. So if we have it on tick, we're just going to fire a false value and not do anything off this function. Let's neaten this up a bit, so I don't like the crisscrossing. Can't really see what's happening. So this is the first and quite simple way of stopping movement whenever we tell it to. Sorry, I thought I'd cut out me making some space there. So that's the first of these events. Set up, put you down a bit, put you over here. The next one I'm going to do will set our location of our character to the mesh and keep it there. So I'm going to add another custom event. We can call that lock movement to mesh. Again, if these names are too long, you can always rename them yourself, whatever you want them to be. From here, we're going to do the same as before. We'll branch and add that, and call it the same thing. Call that set locked. But this time, we're not going to have anything off false. We're just going to set world location. I'm going to set the world location. Oh, I may as well. I'll just call it off here. But you might need to pull that in yourself at some point. We're going to first we'll get mesh from character owner. Oops. Scroll up. Get mesh. Going to get that world location. Then we're going to get our root component, be our capsule component, but I'm going to get that location, world location as well. So I can just duplicate that, plug it in. So from this, right, let's break vector on both of these so that we can make a vector from them. And we're going to take the original Z axis and plug that in there, and we're going to set Z location to whatever it should really be. We're going to take X and Y, plug them in here from the mesh. This is going to pick up pretty much the same transform as that of the pelvis bone, because we're going to be simulating when we fire this. Otherwise, well, you could add this as a pin, add the mesh as a pin, or the character owner and put off the mesh. You could add the mesh as a pin and attach yourself to pretty much any mesh you wanted with this. Or you could make it with a socket and get the socket location instead of the world location. So this way of doing it is quite flexible. This is the way I've seen quite a few tutorials and other guides show how to do it this way. So I thought I'd sort of show my way. I like to do this like this instead of just splitting the pin. But I think that might work, or you might end up setting Z to 0 if you didn't call the original component. Yeah, that's the second way of doing it, I believe. I'll set that to teleport so that we don't get too much like simulation feedback from it. That's the second way, and that's pretty simple, and that's all it has to do. So let's show these two working. If I pull off my mesh here, I say is simulating. You just say if our pelvis is simulating, let's just get these two again for tick. So if our pelvis is simulating, then when we take either of these functions, so let's do this lock movement in place first. Oh, I missed a target. Of course, we're setting the world location of the root component. Probably, no, I'll just bring up the root again. We're setting that like so. That belongs to the root component. Yeah, so setting the world location, the root component to be relative to the mesh when it's simulated. So yeah, this first event, call that up. Say come lock some movement. Lock movement in place. Just plug that in there, and we'll just fire that on tick. Whenever the pelvis is simulating, we should not be able to move. There we go. So then, when it's no longer simulating again, we can move again. Simulating, can't move, simulating. Now, I don't really like doing it this way, but it has the advantage of if you had a flying character, so a character with wings, flies about the place, if he got killed in the air, you could freeze the character up, and then if he got revived, you could pull him back into the air where he was and he'll fall back down, which is quite cool. Yeah, I think that's a pretty neat. So this method has its advantages. You know, I can throw the mannequin places with setting him to simulate while I'm moving. So that's one way of disabling movement that could be quite useful if you have flying characters. The next way of doing this, which I already built, was down here, is locking the movement to the mesh, which will do pretty much the reverse of it. So if we call lock movement to mesh quickly, plug it in like that. The advantage of this one, I suppose, is if you want to stick to the character when he simulates, but not be able to go anywhere from it. So we were running along and we were playing a first-person shooter game, and suddenly we got shot and we died. We'd stick to the character as we fell over and fall around, move around. We're currently sticking to the pelvis, pretty much, because that's the leader of the hierarchy of the bones. Again, like the other function, you could probably do that condition by a socket. This one's quite straightforward about what it does. So the third one. Now, my way of doing this is proving a little bit difficult to explain while going along, but I'm going to try and do my best anyways. First, I'm going to add a custom event, and I'm going to call this restrict movement to vector. Just like the others, I'm going to branch and connect that boolean as a pin to the event. Let's call this set restriction this time. Now I'm going to set this up to show how it works and what's wrong with it first, and then I'm going to fix it. So first off, this true, we're going to branch. For this condition, at the moment, we're going to get our character owner. We're going to get his mesh, and we're going to get socket location, transform one there. This is going to be that ever recurring pelvis bone, and we're also going to get the actor location as well. We're going to subtract vector, the location of the leader of our physics hierarchy from the location of a character owner to find the distance between them, which we can put into a vector length. Right, and if this is greater than or equal to a set number, we're going to want to stop moving. So that's the main bit of this first branch. Also, I'm going to get the root component from the character. I'm going to get its world rotation, and I'm going to compare that to the look at rotation that it would be required for the actor to look at its currently simulating mesh, or the socket that we might choose if we change this up a bit. This could work, doesn't just have to work when mesh is simulating. So we're going to compare these two, and if they're not equal, we're going to want to stop. We're going to want to do pretty much the same thing as this to begin with anyway. So let's set this error tolerance to 90, which I think gives us 90 either side, so minus 90 to 90, so that's effectively 180. If you put this much above 90, it doesn't work properly. So for now, let's put this into an AND boolean, and we'll set this greater than value to say, set it to 200, and I can plug that in. Oops, plug that in there. That can be the condition for this branch for now. So pull these, oops, pull these down a bit, so they can stay there. We're going to do stuff with this bit at some point though. Okay, now we're going to also, from our character owner, get the movement component. Where is it? Let's just get it from here. As soon as it appeared, let's get the movement component, and from this we'll set max walk speed. If we want to be restricting it, I'll set it to 0, and we'll set it back to its default when this fires false. And this has the same target. Okay, so now this, if we plugged this into here, for now, that's not really very safe. That could be safe with the do once, but for what I'm doing with it. For testing this to show why I need to change it from being this way, that should be enough for it to work. So now this should restrict our character from moving when we tell it to. So if we say this mesh is simulating, it's going to find the distance for us between this pelvis bone and the actor location, which would be wherever our capsule is going, and it's going to subtract it. It's going to find that distance and say we're going to fire this if we exceed it. If we exceed this limit, we're going to stop. We're going to drop our max warp speed. This could also be lerped or interpolated, or like use an increment or a decrement to make this sort of a soft limit, but for now I'm just going to keep it as a flat warp speed change. So if I go into, okay, so now right now with the default third person character, this should, if I plug it in on tick, and set it up like the others. So if our pelvis is simulating, this is going to do its thing. It should just work. So we're going to limit ourselves to a distance from pelvis. So as long as we stay within it, we can move around however we like, as long as we're in it. But as soon as we get to this limit, and we're not looking at him within a 90-degree sort of cone, it won't work anymore. So we can be a little way away from him if he simulates and runs off, but we can still run to the ragdoll, but not away from him. Now, this works fine because the default third person character here has a couple of settings set in it. If we turn use controller rotation yaw on, which is often used by maybe say a first person character, then we have a situation where if we simulate but we stay pointing towards the character, we can run away as far as we can. Yeah. So if we turn away from him, we'll stop moving, but we can run away, and yeah, you see what's going on here. Now, this isn't the only setting that messes with it a bit. It's not just use controller rotation yaw. It is also in the character movement, we need to have orient rotation to movement set true, which is another one that might get switched on and off by things like swapping to a first person from a third person mode or something like that. So this needs to be so, and user orient rotation needs to be true. Now having this set also messes with it, but because this overrides it and we need it set to true, that's not really a problem. So it says here overridden by orient rotation to movement, which is this. So in order to fix this, I've got the method that I'm currently using to fix it is by using a method very similar to this that I did earlier, with just simply resetting it, but only if it wants it to be set. If I do that slightly differently, because there's another variable as well that also wants to get changed, but only if we're simulating from the pelvis. So if let's move all of this. down a bit. So I'm going to need this bit across. I need some space. If we disconnect these, I'm just going to build it and carry on trying to explain as I go. And try not to squeak my chair too much. So if this is firing true, I'm going to branch, and I'm going to do 3 Boolean variables in this little setup. The first one is going to be, once I put the sequence in, that's our character movement. I'm going to get walk off ledges. I'm also going to set it. Set walk off ledges. Okay. First thing we're doing is do once. Well, first thing we're doing in the sequence is a do once. Then we're going to set our ability to walk off edges so that we cannot walk off edges. That's only going to happen if we are true. If it's currently set to true, we'll turn it off. Then this is going to continue into another branch, and this false value is going to fire into that branch as well. So let's remove things. Now, what's going to happen here is what's going to happen to the other booleans as well. So I'll explain it once, and then I can just duplicate the whole process across. Save a bit of time plugging things in. So now, when I fire this, I'll plug these in on the end afterwards. When I fire this, I'm going to come through here and see if we can walk off ledges. But we don't want to just see that. We want to make this an AND. Oops. Sorry. We're going to make this an AND boolean, and we're going to find out if our mesh here, that pelvis is simulating physics again, because we don't want to touch this necessarily unless we have lost control of our character completely. So we don't really want to. We want to be walking off ledges if we are simulating from something that is not the pelvis, because that means we're still going to be in control of the mesh. So we just want to skip this if that's the case. Now let's move that down there, and yeah, so that's what's going to happen. Now I need to duplicate this and put this down here. Just try and squeeze it in as nice and neatly as I can. If this value here is false, so we are either looking at it and within our limit, so we can move around, we're going to want to unset this so that we can walk off edges. I think I might have to. Oh no, I think I do a different check for this than the other ones. So if can walk off ledges is not then we're going to fire it so that we can walk off ledges. Then that starts closed but gets reset if we set it up here. Okay, so if we're giving control back, we're then saying, oh, we can actually walk off ledges. Apologies, I cut myself there to check I was getting this bit right. I was on the right track, so it's okay. I'm going to get rid of this not Boolean that I put there, and I'm just going to come off this and call this as a not Boolean, because this equates to pretty much the same thing and is actually what we wanted to function from. So if the pelvis is not simulating and we cannot walk off ledges, then we will fire through here and do this if we've been reset and we've even touched it in the first place, and then we can reset our ability to turn it off again. That I believe is correct. It should function much the same way for the other ones. Should we pull this down and pull this up? Make it a little bit neater now, and then I can duplicate the process and go through it all the way. All of those to there and pull these down a bit and see what's going on. Just leave that there. So when we fire true, if we're simulating from the pelvis, we're not going to want to walk off any ledges. When it fires false, squeak that chair again. When it fires false, if we can walk off ledges is not true, and the pelvis is no longer simulating, then we will fire the reset for it, if it can even be fired, if this has happened in the first place. Right, so the next two bits look pretty much the same as this. So I'm just going to grab this bit, I'm going to duplicate it. Let's try and get it sort of even. I think it was there in line. So now, just as these ones did, I'm going to plug that in there, plug that in there. Then we have another branch, another set of branches. I'm going to duplicate it again, and then replace the variables, because we do this to two booleans to make this a bit more compatible. So start the other one, fire through if we're not doing this, and after we've done it. Okay, so now we're going, so let's do, what should we do first? We've done walk off ledges. Let's do orient rotation to movement, which comes from, I think, character owner. We need to pull off here and say set orient rotation to movement. Oh, that comes with the character movement. My bad. Okay. Change that type in a minute. Same place as this. So I'm going to set this to true because we need it. That's one of the main bits. Plug it into that reset down there. And if we, on the off chance we are in first person or something, and we're not, or for any reason we're not using it, but we wanted it turned on so that we could restrict the movement, I'll turn it back off again and plug that into there. Ooh, turn it back off again. Start's closed. And the condition for this is going to be get orient rotation to movement. And if this is false, oops, this is so, I want to get this to not boolean. If this is not true, we're going to fire it, and down here, if it is true, we're going to fire it, but it won't fire unless we've already set it. Like the other ones, we could do an AND boolean if we had other things we wanted to affect this, and I'll come back. I might come back to that because there's the whole issue of swapping these while it's firing true would then mean it's going to get unset because this has been reset. So if you want it to stay true because you set a setting, it's easier to demonstrate that with the yaw though. So I'll do that one now. Going to set controller yaw. Yeah, set use controller yaw. This is the one that comes off the character. You have to have a bit of a reroute there. Just put it way down. And then I'll delete these again. I've already set the walk off ledges. Use controller yaw is going to want to be off. If we've had to turn it off, then we'll turn it back on again. And that plugs in there, and that plugs in there. Get rid of that. New. Both come from the same place. Drop that down here so it can come underneath everything. Now, I'm not currently restricting any movement off this because I haven't plugged the end of it in yet. And keep these conditions still. So we're going off here, we can, same as before, use controller rotation yaw, and if it's true, we'll turn it off. If it's, oops, if it's not, then if it's not, we'll set it back if it's been set. Right. Now we need to get our two max warp speeds here. Plug them in to the end. And then we're going to need to change one of the condition at the beginning because the rotation is relative to the controller rotation yaw and the orient rotation to movement. So let me get up to speed on my desktop. And okay, I have a branch from here. The condition for this branch is this boolean here. We're going to swap this and take this off this AND boolean here, get rid of this, and this can just be controlled by this vector length there. Just put that back to 150, and so let's just put it off from here. and then we can reroute that above so we know that what it's doing. That'll do alright. You can see what's happening there, kind of. Voice across maybe. Okay. This is true. Set it to 0. If it's false, set it to 600. Both of these want to fire into here. And then I'm going to make a little safety precaution of a do once here. This firing this bit resets it. I think this is right. And then right at the beginning, if this fires false, I'm going to do once, so that if this gets toggled off, we can fire through and unset everything quickly. Right? Put that there, and this gets reset by this little do once. So that makes a bit of a sort of safety precaution. Pull that down so you can see it. Let's get another one of those somewhere over here. Then I can neaten this up a bit better later. But that should now turn these variables off or on as we need them to be able to function. So no matter what kind of character, or whether we're in third person or first person mode, like with different settings, should still fire, because things are just going to come up false most of the time. Like if we, so using it now on the default character with the default settings, the only thing we're actually going to change, switch on and off, is can walk off ledges, which is only going to be while we're simulating the pelvis, because otherwise we're probably going to want to be walking off ledges. So with these already being set, we're just going to fire through here false, and on the other way we'll fire through here. We'll try and reset it maybe, but it won't happen because it never fired in the first place, because the do once will not have been reset. So that's the same with this one. And it comes out at the end. If we want to be restricting movement, depending on whether we're looking at the character or not. So within the vector length, so the vector length is defining which side of this we're shooting down here, and then the rotation is making the final decision as to whether we are going to stop the max walk speed. That's why I moved it, because if we put it up front, it doesn't get these two rotations, or we can still run away backwards when we have used controller rotation yaw set to true. So that should work, I hope. It's taken me long enough to get this explained legibly, so I want to check it. That's correct. Okay, so let's take this for a spin then. Oh, I forgot to connect targets, of course. Movement, max walk speed, can I pull that off there? No, that comes off here. So I'll put that in there and pull that down or something. There we go. That doesn't start closed. Oh, I might have forgotten to use start closed. We don't want to fire this like as soon as we start firing this on event tick if we're not simulating or doing anything that needs to be restricted. So we did put this on here. So if we compile, save that, and then let's make this visible in the game, and we can't edit this one, so we'll duplicate it and we'll make this visible in the game too, so we can really see what's going on then. So now let me just make sure. So this is at default. This is going to have almost no noticeable difference to what I did previously with the condition combined at the beginning and just the walk speed. Yeah. So this should make no difference at all. Yeah, we still can't. Yeah, it's just working how it's supposed to. Now, before, if I turned use controller yaw on in here, we'd be able to run backwards away from our ragdoll anyways, despite the restrictions. So now we have use controller yaw, then we still have it on until we get to the vector length and it turns off. See? So we get to the length, or we don't have the rotation, and we don't have it. And as soon as we do it, because it's been reset, it's been changed, we're resetting it back, as opposed to if we're not. So yeah, this looks like it's working to me. The next thing that could be done with this would be to go back to what I was doing before with it, which was with a soft limit on the end here, with max walk speed, but this video's got long enough already, so I think I'm probably going to have to stop it here if I can't think of anything else I need to explain. Oh yeah, if we were swapping from first person to third person, like a kind of game mode that we might make, something that I often have in a character because I like to use both. So we'd want to check somewhere on this sequence here, probably just after the do once, we could branch to see if we were in first person. We might want to do that on both. It's more important, I think, to do it on the bottom by priority, so we don't accidentally turn use controller rotation yaw off, or turn it back on again, because this will have fired if we were in first person mode, so we'll be able to reset it when it comes back round. So we'd want to branch and check that if we were in first person or third person mode, or any other kind of game change that might edit one of these. The same goes for these two, and you probably don't really need me to. If you're messing with can walk off ledges, then you probably don't need me to explain it to you.